Welcome
So,
back, everybody. This is episode 3 of Connection from Here. We're really happy to be here with you today.
hey, it's so good to be having this time together. I appreciate this conversation we're all taking part in. It feels good to be talking about these things.
The last time we were together, Mom, we were talking about what it means to be spiritual but not religious. And we were talking about how these folks who are spiritual but not religious, like me included, are still seeking meaning, connection, and community. And you brought up non religious chaplains as professionals who are well equipped to guide people and help them find meaning. But I was thinking myself, that is one piece of the puzzle. Chaplains create a safe space to explore life's big questions, but it's not directly an answer to the finding community piece of the puzzle. More people than ever are stepping away from organized religion. So, where do we turn for support, meaning, and connection? Hi, friends, and welcome to Connection from Here, finding community in a changing world. I'm Michele Perry.
And I'm Ashley Beatty Perry.
We're so happy you're here.
The connection with each other is an important piece of that. So, in your thinking through and pondering the idea of community, what types of things have you been thinking about and reading about as people are seeking to connect in community?
I was kind of thinking about how the meaning of the word community has changed over time. I did see that the root word means joint ownership. In early human times, community was more like we share the same geographical area, we're connected, and we're sharing these crops that we grow together, we're sharing these animals, we're helping each other raise kids, that kind of thing. It was purely geographical. And of course, nowadays, it's not so much. I mean, it could be geographical, but it's more relational. That's one thing to note about community. And also, and let me know if you agree, Mom, that the word community is sometimes used so much that it just becomes like a sugar, or it's just thrown around so loosely. I believe my Starbucks app refers to us coffee drinkers as the Starbucks community. And I was reading an article that said back in 2018, as Mark Zuckerberg was going through some of his Facebook trials, that he referred to the 2 billion Facebook users as his community. And he was sorry to disappoint the community of 2 billion. A fourth of the world's population is a community somehow.
A real community.
So that's kind of, the place we are in terms of the word community. But what does it mean to you?
The search for genuine connection and care and community, it can make it feel even more isolating because, well, if this is a community and this is a community and, I'm supposed to be feeling good, be in this community of coffee drinkers, but still it almost makes it more isolating and more lonely for people because the word's being thrown around so much, but yet even more so, we're feeling without community. So in some ways, that piece that you're talking about, because it's so common, it almost makes it more painful to be, you're like, well, not really. This is still not really getting at what my yearning is. I was listening recently, former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy was continuing to talk. He did so much work when he was the U.S. Surgeon General, and I think continues to think about these issues of community and connection. That piece of, he was behind some of the research of the loneliness epidemic and what so many of us are going through in the country. And so he was talking about when you're talking about a true community, a lot of times that's going to involve relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to involve purpose. We're here for something larger than ourselves. And it's also going to involve service. Like, how are we contributing to other people's lives? There's a real depth to those components. If you think about it, that you're not going to find that in the Starbucks app. These relationships, this sense of purpose, this sense of service, and how are we contributing to the lives of others? So I appreciated Vivek Murthy's thoughts about we really are seeking something deeper. And these components get after that deeper meaning of community, the holding something together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like what you said there from the Surgeon General. I read something similar from an article actually from 1986, but it's still relevant today. They mentioned four basic elements of community. Most were the ones you said, and then the one I'll add was the sense of mattering to the community that you're a part of. Like if you don't show up one day, people are going to
Yes.
notice, and you can make
Yes.
contributions. That is absolutely missing in these
Oh,
corporations that say their customers are their community. Because at the end of the day, the
right.
customers can't affect what the company does. That's still private. All the power lies with the corporation. But in these communities that you and I are seeking, the hope is that what we do will matter to the community. We can make a positive change in there and our voice will
Yeah.
be heard.
And I love that component, that belonging. I mean,
Belong.
it
Yeah.
matters that you're here. You make this community better by being part of it. And it does make a difference. And I think that feels so important too, because humans, we long to matter. It's deep within us. Do I matter? Does it matter that I'm here? And so I like this deeper sense of community. It is like this is a place where you matter. There is a purpose here for the community, and part of that purpose is you being here to build with us and be with us, and you matter in doing that. Oh, that feels so true. Just true to the
Yeah.
bones. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I also think that and you and I searching for community and us ultimately trying to build a community that maybe we can talk about a little bit later, that this is kind of in opposition to a movement that you see happening right now, which is kind of the solitary happiness pursuits and the huge collection
Yeah.
of self-care and wellness type focus that really I think that there is value to be found in activities like meditation and any kind of self care introspection routines that you may have. But what they're finding is, despite that saying happiness comes from within, happiness is an inside job, true happiness comes from connecting with others. And like we talked about with the loneliness epidemic idea, it's like it
Yeah.
comes from being with others. And I saw an author that said if you have the option between meditating by yourself or going to a bar and complaining with your friends about a meditation class, you should choose the bar choice every time because there's just so much value to be found
Yeah.
in connecting with each other. So just something to think about in this modern day.
Yeah. And you saying that, it reminds us so much like finding yourself and true to yourself, all these
Yes,
pieces, which
exactly.
are, certainly are important. But again, you're talking about a very individualistic quest. It's me and discovering me and how am I in, my happiness. So while those pieces are very important, taken too far, what you have is a very isolating kind of individualistic existence, really. And that sense of how am I contributing to other people's lives is just not part of that conversation. And if we are talking about our very basic needs that we are, meant for each other as social beings, there's a sense of loss for yourself
Yeah.
individually in that you're not connecting. And then if you take that to the other side, there's a loss to the community in that. The community is made better because you're a part of the community. So if a person is then just going to take this very individualistic
Mhm.
inner self kind of route, the community misses out as well. The person individually is now without something that matters to humans. And then I just think that's interesting from both sides of that. That's a real loss. It seems to me if somebody's only on this quest of their own personal happiness or their own personal well-being, or, it just matters to self, there's real losses in that.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody
Yeah,
misses out if everyone becomes solitary. So,
that's right.
and I wanted to ask you something you, I think, mentioned to me was that there's a difference between community and friendship because we talk about how humans need relationships, right? But there's
Yeah,
different types of relationships. And
yeah.
can you kind of say more on what you know about the differences between just interacting with your friends versus being in
Yeah.
community?
And that is an interesting concept too that I've just recently been thinking about, and that comes from kind of reading the work and hearing some of the interviews with Catherine Goldstein. She's a journalist and an author who is doing some work in these areas of community and what it looks like in this day and time. And so, one of the things she has mentioned is there is a difference in friendship and community. And some of that difference a little bit can get to what you're talking about, because if you think about a friendship between two people or a small group of people, these are people who can be very, very connected. And I will say, not all of this Catherine Goldstein has said. Let me just insert, I'm putting some of my own thoughts onto Catherine Goldstein's work. But yes, so in thinking about some of the work that Catherine Goldstein is doing, I have also thought, because what you're finding, it's you and you've got a small friend group, or again, that can become its own insular situation. That it's very important. Now, please don't misunderstand. Of course, friendships and these things, oh my gosh, are just so matter and are just pivotal relationships in our lives. But there is a difference in friendships versus community, in that the friendship is kind of, maybe there's this real connection, just the two of us. But even so, is there a larger concept of community that fits in? In other words, here's the friendship relationship, but it doesn't mean that people don't also need community in a larger sense in their lives, because sometimes when it's so weighted on, I'm looking to you to fill these needs for me, sometimes a romantic relationship or friendship relationship, if this is the person that's now going to help me when I'm sick and listen to my bad day and go out to eat and have fun together and help me figure out this part of my life that I'm not sure about, that's a lot. That's asking a lot of one person, and it's wonderful when it can happen. But the thing about community is that you're dealing with a lot of people who know enough about you to care, who maybe can fill different roles in your life. So maybe they don't all know this new recipe to try or this new restaurant to try, but they know that you had a test in school this past week, or they don't all know the intimacies of what you're going through with your work situation, but they know if you've lost your job. And so these are people who know you enough to care about your daily living, and you matter to them. And so here's a casserole in this hard time. I know you're struggling, you've lost your job, or I know you've been sick lately. So can we help give you a ride to the doctor? I had not really considered that difference very much, but I do think it's an interesting concept to consider, of like, even when there are close friendships, people still need this larger community.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of brings me back to what we talked about. I think it was the last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago, not sure, but talking about how we used to enjoy that aspect of community at church, the church that we attended, and at times that you were the pastor of, to not everyone there knows your personal details and every aspect of your story, but they know enough about you to care, and the same with you towards them. And that's just such an
Yeah.
uplifting, like, nest and network of folks to have. And other than church, I can think of only a couple of other instances in my life that I felt that kind of network. Of course, apart from my family, like you said, family and friendships are kind of a different story there. Those fulfill other needs in your life.
That's right.
But
That's right.
the community it's a particular specific need.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, for example, I was in band for a lot of my childhood, for like a good decade of life. And it makes me think, because, I played oboe, and I'd have friends in the band, like a couple of other instrumentalists, and we would hang out. We were a closer group, but the true community feeling came in, with the entire band, everyone playing
Yeah.
music together. That's just creating something beautiful like that. And not everyone in the band knew my business, and I didn't all know their business all the time, but it's just like, if you were in need, any one of those people in the band would have been there for you, just
That's
because you
right.
share that connection. And that was
Yeah.
wonderful. And it kind of makes me
Yeah.
wonder, what are your personal experiences with community, with having it, with not, throughout your life, that you might want to
Yeah.
mention?
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting too. I love that band concept
Mm-hmm.
of, almost like that kind of paints such a nice picture of community that everybody's playing an instrument together. Here's the music that we have. We're part of this larger purpose and doing this thing together. And it matters if an instrument is not there. You're
Yeah.
missed. What you have to offer matters to the community. And yeah, it can be a difficult journey to find such as that. One of the aspects that can be hard, and we kind of started, at the top of the podcast, originally you're talking about communities in just geographical senses, like the ancient, here we are geographically linked. So here we are in community. And I think in more modern times, as people are more mobile, they're moving around to, different cities across the country and so forth. It's that geographical piece is no longer for a lot of people. And then also, I think for a lot of people, geographically is just not where they find their connection. And so I
Right.
think that's been the case for me so often in life. A lot of places I've lived, you don't really feel like you fit necessarily with the mindset of the community, or this is the way, the outlook here. And so I have felt that struggle of being without community and kind of looking around to say, where do I fit in this kind of space? And the real sadness when you don't feel like you fit, there's not a space for you that, we are kind of this purpose together. Because again, we're talking about the relationships of a community, and that sense of purpose does have to be, these things do have to be in place for that community to feel like a community for the person. We are all part of this. This is kind of what we're working toward together. And so I think it can be very difficult for people. It certainly has been difficult for me in like in-person communities. How do you grasp onto that when you're not finding that same sense of purpose with those around you? It can be a challenge. And I think for so many, it's we've talked about in that loneliness epidemic, I certainly feels like that's got to be one piece of it, is like, how do you find a sense of that belonging, working toward the larger music together, for instance? Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think that's so profound, because a lot of times it's taken for granted, and maybe how it used to be, in the early human days, is who you were around, you automatically shared connections
Yeah.
with, because geography and being in the same town was enough to
Yeah.
unite folks around a common goal of, we're going to protect our clan, or we're going
Yeah.
to make this town work. But like you said, it's such a
Yeah.
mobile country that it seems actually unlikely that you would just happen to live in an area
Yeah.
where people share your same point of view on
Yeah.
politics, on social issues, on,
Yeah.
I mean, even just hobbies. For instance, like if you happen to go to a university where sports are such a huge deal and everyone's all about sports, kind of speaking
Yeah.
from personal experience here,
Yes.
but that's just, it's just not your interest, and you immediately feel like you don't
Yeah.
have something to connect with others about. It does feel
That's right.
isolating. And it's like, you don't
That's right.
want to have to conform to fit into the community that just happens to be there. You want to feel like you truly belong, like it's a kind of
That's right.
a natural fit. So yeah,
That's
I think
right.
something you and I have both struggled with, and I'm sure our listeners, I mean, we would love to hear your stories, your
Absolutely.
experiences with finding geographic community, relationship
Yeah.
community, all that stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think that, and there is where the individual because you are still yourself as you're
Exactly.
seeking the community. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, to go one way too far in just seeking out your own wellness, your own well-being, versus not having any sense of community. But then the other aspect of that is, like you said, to be part of a community that would require conforming and losing your sense of who you are to be part of that. I think that's the other end of the spectrum, is you don't want that for people either. You want people to be able to be, their true selves. And then the community just kind of lifts that up. It's almost like we carry each other in, here's my true self, here's your true self. And now we can be about this larger purpose together. And like you're saying, that's lost. You do want to be able to be your true self in a community, because otherwise, again, you're talking about that just does not feel like community to you.
Yeah, if you feel like you have to put on a facade or a character to
Yeah,
fit into your community, that's not your community at all. You want it to feel like,
that's right.
I think
That's
you
right.
used the word before, like falling into community. Like
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah,
a place where
yeah.
you can feel safe,
That's right.
rest, there's no particular stress. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's the goal.
yeah.
And I think it's not a given that we have that these days. We actually have to, it seems we have to take specific steps and actions to find community. And sometimes even when we try, it still doesn't work out. So
That's right. That's exactly, exactly. And I think that's what we're hoping to build as we're thinking about these things and building out the work you and I are building at Hope Base, a kind of community, because what you want people to have the experience of is, I, in my true self, am welcome here.
yes.
I am welcome here. I matter here. I'm part of doing something larger here with these people. I'm part of contributing to the lives of others here. And I'm doing that because I'm able to be my full self
Mm-hmm.
in this space. It is a place of safety that I can be my true self in this welcoming, inclusive space that now I can live out being part of this larger purpose in being of service to people, contributing to other people's lives. It just, the work to build this type of community is a worthwhile effort. It's building something that goes against the grain. So it goes against the grain, and it's a worthwhile endeavor to be building something for people to be themselves and then have this connection to something where they know they matter, where feel like you're part of something larger, and being of help in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what's profound about the community that we hope to exist and that we want to exist is that this kind of community would have no ulterior motives. A lot of times when you think about religion and these institutions that have been around for centuries and centuries, some of them are really rooted in power, that dynamic of
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
controlling the
Yeah.
masses. And true community that welcomes everyone should have no ulterior motive other than just to be and to make everybody feel comfortable and make sure everybody belongs. And yeah, it's
That's right.
so profound. And you can tell kind of right away when you step into a situation if it feels like, oh, they have an ulterior motive or they don't
Yeah.
really, they just kind of want something from me, and
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
all deserve to have a place where we don't have to have our guard up and be like, oh, what does this
Yeah.
person want from me, or what does this
Yeah.
institution want from me, to just have your heart open, have your guard down, and just
Yeah.
be, embraced in this safe place. That's the hope.
Indeed. And as we're bringing this episode to a close, I want to mention also just advocating for my colleagues, my non religious chaplain colleagues here. I continue to think about the way chaplains care for people can be such a model for this type of community, because the idea of the way chaplains model compassion and unconditional acceptance and just being with you how you are, the way chaplains care for people and model that there's no agenda.
Yeah.
I want you to think this, I want you to believe this, I want you to become this or what. That's just not the way chaplains care for people. It is this model of unconditional acceptance and being with you as you are in your humanity and as you are about this place in the world. And so I do, as we're continuing to think about community and models for what can be true community for people, I do continue to think about the way chaplains offer care and offer connection as a way to kind of be what a community, that type of relationships with others, that type of being with each other, that type of connection. Goodness gracious, it matters.
And I know that's something that's been on your mind and my mind as we kind of wrestle with how to kind of build this community of our hopes, and is the bringing together, the meshing of this chaplain aspect, these just kind professionals and kind human beings, with the aspect of community, somehow bringing those two together. That is what makes me very excited about Hope Base and the work we're trying to do, is just to mesh these two things,
Yeah.
because not only the wonderful care of these trained
Yeah.
individuals, but also how do we have that in community? That's
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
excited to keep working with you towards, and keep
Yeah.
learning from it.
Yeah.
I feel like we learn from it every day.
And we for sure do, for sure do. The aspects of our end segment of how to provide this type of care to each other and in connection, that I like that we have our takeaways. Like these are, no kidding, real ways we can connect with each other and build this type of care in the relationships we have in our daily lives, and maybe that would work toward building out communities. So I think you have something special that we can kind of take away and
Yes.
utilize this week.
Yes, this particular one is on my mind a lot, because back during the COVID pandemic, I had the honor to serve as a volunteer crisis counselor on a crisis text line. And we'll make sure to put all those resources in the show notes for you if you're interested in either volunteering or using that resource. It's an excellent resource.
Absolutely.
But in that training, one of the things that was taught was the idea of reflecting and validating. So say somebody comes to you and they're sharing about their friend who stood them up at their special birthday dinner, and they tell you, I just can't believe that she didn't show up. This was my special moment and she didn't show up. She doesn't care about me at all, or something like that. A great response maybe to show that you're listening and also kind of gain an understanding and give that other person a chance to express themselves more is to say something like, oh, I'm hearing that you're feeling betrayed by your friend who didn't show up for you in that special moment. So it's kind of summarizing, not word for word, but kind of reflecting back what that person's told to you. And that then gives them a chance to say, yes, betrayed. I feel betrayed. Or maybe they say, well, not betrayal, but I feel disrespected by my friend, or I feel this certain way. And then they can continue on. It gives them an opening to continue, talking about how they feel. And then also along the way to throw in phrases like, it makes a lot of sense that you feel that way. Like, that is so understandable. That's that validation point of, yes, your feelings are real, they matter, and it makes sense that you would feel that way. So reflection and validation are two aspects that I think we can all carry with us in our day-to-day relationships.
Gosh, yeah. What a difference that makes for people. You feel like you've been heard and
Yes.
validated. Yeah, gosh, that makes a real difference. What a gift. What a gift for people. And certainly building that connection. Oh my goodness, that
Right.
matters. So wonderful. Well, thank you for this time. And listeners, thank you for this time and for continuing this conversation. And we sure look forward to hearing from you. Please let us know your thoughts on these ideas of connection and community and care as we continue to talk and think about these big issues. So, yeah.
And we're so excited to continue the conversation, and we will see you next time.
That's right. See you soon. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.